What is ADHD? ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and is a behavioral condition that makes focusing on everyday requests and routines challenging. ADHD can affect a person in a lot of different ways. Whether you are young or old, it can alter many different things about you. One large effect ADHD has in children is emotional dysregulation, or ED. Emotional dysregulation is a term used to describe an emotional response that is poorly regulated and does not fall within the traditionally accepted range of emotional reaction. While ED is not a classic symptom of ADHD, R. Silverman et al. Says that there is clear evidence that dysregulated attention and poor inhibitory control characteristics of this disorder extend to emotions, with 25 to 45% of children with ADHD exhibiting ED. Because ADHD affects many school-age children, people should understand what is happening in their bodies and why they are acting the way they are. While I am no doctor, I have done research on this topic. I want to work with children, so it is important that I can learn everything about them I can. Children that show signs of ED and ADHD may have trouble recognizing emotions, may have affected emotional stimuli processing, and may engage in inappropriate behaviors for their age. One symptom of ED in children with ADHD is not being able to recognize emotions. Through research, I have found that not only can they not recognize emotions, but they also cannot use context clues to see an emotion or an item absent from the scene. In a research project conducted by De Fonseca et al., researchers conducted 2 experiments. Experiment 1 evaluated facial emotion recognition, and Experiment 2 evaluated emotion recognition based on context clues. In Experiment 1, they had a group of 27 children from ages 5 to 15 years old. There were 21 boys and 6 girls, all with ADHD. The control group was also made up of 27 children. There were 21 boys and 6 girls from ages 5 to 15. The conductors of the experiment took 40 pictures from popular French magazines. There were 10 pictures expressing sadness, 10 pictures expressing anger, 10 pictures expressing fear, and 10 pictures expressing happiness. Here are some examples. The first is happiness. Then we have sadness, and finally, anger. The participant would sit in a quiet room and look at one of the magazine pictures. Then they would choose from 3 different emoticons. One of the emoticons was the right emotion, and the other 2 were wrong. The second experiment was conducted using the same test participants. Researchers wanted to see if children with ADHD were able to use context clues to see an emotion or an item absent from the scene. In this experiment, there were 60 pictures taken from popular French magazines. They scanned the pictures and masked an object or a facial expression with emotion. Participants were tested the same way as Experiment 1, sitting in a quiet room and choosing from 3 different emoticons. In the emoticons, they had to choose the missing facial expression or the missing objects. De Fonseca et al. Explained that, taken together, results of both Experiment 1 and 2 converged to suggest that participants with ADHD did show a specific emotion processing deficit. Although this research is very thorough, I decided to look at more research projects to see if others' findings lined up. The findings did line up with von Strahlen. Von Strahlen not only believed that children with ED and ADHD had trouble recognizing emotions, but also had affected stimuli processing. Through research, von Strahlen found this was true. To figure this out, they compiled together 98 references that required information related to the neuropsychology of emotional dysregulation in children with ADHD. The articles were then filtered based on if or if not they were related to ADHD and ED. They kept the ones that did. Out of the 98 articles, 25 of them met the criteria. Tests from these studies showed that emotional stimuli processing is affected in children with ADHD. Researchers concluded this by performing neuropsychological tests on emotion control. Von Strahlen learned that children with ED and ADHD have their emotional stimuli processing affected, and also realized there was more. They found that children with ED and ADHD also engage in behaviors that are typically inappropriate for their age. While researching, von Strahlen also found that most of emotional dysregulation in ADHD is characterized as the concepts of inability to modulate an emotional response and excessive reactions to a particular emotional trigger that would be considered inappropriate for the developmental age of the individual and the social setting. Some of these behaviors would include throwing tantrums and irritability. It is important to recognize these symptoms in children so that they can get the treatment they need. There are many signs of emotion dysregulation in children with ADHD. Emotion dysregulation with ADHD in children is something that adults should take very seriously. Some signs of this are if a child has trouble recognizing emotions. Another sign is if a child has an affected emotional stimuli processing. Children may also engage in inappropriate behaviors for their age. Although this research gave us helpful insight, the work on ED and ADHD has just begun. Thank you.